Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. We had a pretty rousing discussion last night with our good friend Al Robinson in with Joe Niola and Mike Toohey talking about 2006 and the Ned Lamont, Joe Lieberman campaign, and looking back on that and then trying to work forward and segue that into later years, including what's going on now, and looking at how things cause a ripple effect down the road and how it affects what happens years later. But anyway, so before we get started, on Progressive Soup on YouTube, Kristin40, that's Kristin 40, and easier on Facebook, Progressive Soup. That's the easy way to find us. And we've got 6 years worth of shows to scroll backwards to. Almost 7 now. But we're going to go on and talk a little more about what we were talking about last week, about our third-party candidates that we have that are trying to make some headway in the race and trying to get into the debates and trying to get their name out there. And I'm going to let Joe Niola talk about the Green Party candidate, then I'm going to let Mike Toohey talk about the Libertarian Party candidate.
I'd just like to pick up a little bit on what Al Robinson had said.
Mm-hmm.
And he did make a very, what I thought, a significant comment with respect to how a political candidate can actually influence the agenda. And it seemed as though the whole Ned Lamont movement, it brought a more progressive view into the political arena. The idea of actually opposing the war in Iraq when most of the politicians were politically committed to it and wanted to see a favorable outcome. Lamont was against it. And
just before, not to interrupt you, but I will say that Hillary Clinton was a big proponent of the war in Iraq, too.
Yeah, Hillary does
she's got a history as a bit of a hawk.
She does have some hawkish tendencies, and I'd like to pick up on that just briefly. But it did affect the political climate, and it did allow for some changes of position with regard to the war. Now, in Hillary's case, Hillary she's a consummate pragmatist. She doesn't necessarily have what appears to be a moral compass. She pretty much goes in the direction of the poles, so to speak, as the wind goes. But there was an incident during her when she was Secretary of State, where there were these islands just off the coast of Korea that China feels they have an interest in these islands. Mm-hmm. Now there were two. The generals felt it was time for a display. Mm-hmm. It was a time to show that America was not going to be intimidated by China's claims to these islands.
Now, were these South Korean or North Korean islands?
They were south.
Okay, I was about to say.
They were south
because there's a slight. I mean, even though it may be 2 centimeters apart, it's a slight difference, but it can be.
This was South Korea. And so the generals felt that we should take some of our Navy assets and move them along the waterway that was close to those islands to make it very clear to China, that it's something that they have to sort of lay off. Well, you can do something like that, but it has a provocative quality to it. Okay, so the generals were in favor of it. They pose it to Hillary, and Hillary buys into it right off the bat. Hillary is in agreement with the generals. Yeah, let's get those ships right up close to those islands and show those Chinese that we really mean business. Obama looks at it and says, wait a minute. We could show our strength. But we don't have to go up that particular waterway. All right, let's show that we are in support of the South Koreans because they're allies of ours. But we don't have to go that way. Let's kind of go this way, and we can get the message across and not be as provocative. Mm-hmm. So, it's just another indication of the fact that Hillary may feel a need to be hawkish. I don't know it's because of her actual political beliefs, or she feels that as a woman it's important for her to show a strong authoritarian view of her possible presidential.
I would disagree, but I understand your point.
Yeah.
So, and I would like to add also, you can look at the war thing as you're talking about, but you can also look at, I showed on my show, there was an interview she did with Chris Matthews back when she was in the Senate, and he asked her a very pointed question, I would think, that does she believe that gay marriage should be legalized in New York, and she just said no. And then a few years later, she becomes a presidential nominee, and gay marriage for everyone, and everyone should be able to get married. So as you were saying, as the polls go, as the people go, she's more than willing to jump on, the anti-war bandwagon, then the pro-war bandwagon, and the same thing with gay marriage, among other things.
Well, after consulting with her corporate constituents, they may say, "Listen, we're not going to lose any. We're not going to lose any money on this, and then we may even gain." So go with that.
You were talking about Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate.
Yeah, Jill Stein intrigues me. She, in the sense that she's a sort of a female personification of the whole Bernie Sanders scenario in so many respects, even the way she operates.
Yep.
Her donations to her particular party, the Green Party, had gone up 1,000%. And if you break the money down, it's like $27 per person. Very, very similar to what Bernie was getting. And the impression you get is that Bernie Sanders supporters, don't forget, there's this debate going on. There's this political discussion going on, and Bernie's stating his position, stating the strength of his position over his opponent, the Secretary of State,
Clinton.
Thank you. Clinton.
That person over there.
Yeah, that one over there, right. So people are buying into his argument. People are saying, hey, listen, he's got a point here. She is too corporate. If she's so corporate that she can't possibly be a candidate for the people. She's a candidate for the money.
Well, somehow Donald Trump is the most corporate guy you can think of, but he's a candidate for the people, apparently.
He is too. He's corporate, but he's also a political outsider in a lot of ways.
Now, I haven't researched this, but has Jill Stein any political background before she jumped into this election?
Yes. She ran in 2012. So she does.
Has she ever held like an office or?
She hasn't. She's been a doctor.
But I'm gonna add a little drama into this on the part of what Jill Stein supporters are hearing from the Democratic Party. You don't want to vote for Jill Stein because that'll make Donald Trump president. Oh, fear. Now
you say the same thing about
I'll get to that. Trust me. I'll get there too. Trust me. Mike, the Libertarian candidate. Let's hear. Tell us about Gary Johnson.
Well, Gary Johnson is a two-term governor from New Mexico, and he's the only candidate that I've seen in this election and in the last couple elections that has actually balanced the budget for his state. And he actually sent back, I talked about this a little bit the last time, but he sent back the budget a couple of times when it wasn't balanced. So that's a definite plus for me. If a lot of people, this is kind of a non sequitur, but a lot of people were falling in love with Paul Ryan because he was working out, and everyone was loving that. If you want a candidate that works out, Gary Johnson has climbed Mount Everest. That's a little non sequitur, but He's for ending the drug war, which is disproportionately attacks lower income people, minorities, African Americans, and Hispanics, despite the fact that white people use drugs about the same, maybe even a little bit more than other groups do, but we need to lock everybody else up. He's for getting us out of a lot of foreign entanglements, bringing a lot of our troops home. That doesn't mean every single troop in every single country comes home, because as Joe pointed out, there's still shows of force from China or from North Korea or Iraq or some other places that might need troops there, but we don't need to be in, I think we're in 120-something countries, and we have bases in hundreds more. And there's a lot more that we could be doing with that money. We could be selling those bases to those people and then using that money to either fund healthcare or fund education or fund something. And then, as I was saying before, the more you fund these things in the front end, we can then take the taxes and incrementally bring them down so that we don't have to keep supplying tons and tons of money to the federal government. And that's the libertarian model, where we just part of the libertarian model. There's some that just say no government, get rid of all the government, which is
like any party.
Which is insane.
There's two extremes, and the majority of people in the center, they want limited government.
Yeah, all we need is a Coast Guard.
There you go. Okay. And there's some people that have talked about the Green Party and the Libertarian Party merging. And doing, I think you had talked about before, like a coalition ticket.
That would be, as a way of gaining more access to the media, and then maybe they can fragment later, just so that they would be able to enter the discussion, just so that they can somehow or other compete with those two parties which are already bought and rigged.
Remind us about the cooperation between the Greens and the Libertarians on gaining access to the debates.
Well, last year they started a lawsuit. I forget offhand, I can look it up, but I forget offhand where the lawsuit was filed. But the Green Party and the Libertarian Party came together to gain access to the debates from the Commission of Debates, citing First Amendment violation and I think antitrust violations. And they were both knocked down because the Commission of Presidential Debates is a private organization and not a public organization or a government organization. And I think that confuses a lot of people. So if that commission just arbitrarily, this go around or next go around says, you know what, we want the Communist Party and the Constitutionalist Party, and those are the only parties we're allowing in this debate, they can do that. They can negate the Republicans and the Democrats completely and everybody else, but they won't do that because they're largely made up of very hardcore Democrats, very hardcore Republicans who are appointed largely by other Democrats and other Republicans. So it becomes very, very hard, as I was trying to talk to Al the last time, as he said, well, you should just get out and get it. It shouldn't be hard to get 15% of people on your side. It is hard, especially when the polling is looked at as, okay, who do you side with, Hillary or Trump? Well, I side with Gary Johnson. Well, no, it's either Hillary or Trump.
And they don't give those options quite often.
Well, I like Jill Stein. Well, no, you have one of two. I always use it as do you like Coke or Pepsi? And then, you say, what about iced tea or lemonade or water or any other number of drinks? Well, no, you can only drink Coke or Pepsi. And then I think when you say that, it kind of shows people that when you're only allowed one of two options, you tend to go with the option you like more and than the option you hate less.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's basically what they're saying.
I have to get my drama piece in on this one now. Okay. Oh my God! If you go vote for Gary Johnson, all you're doing is making Hillary Clinton president. That's the fear factor that they use on the Republican side. So both parties are using that fear.
And they've been using that for the better part of 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, to drive their electorate to keep it at a two-party system and to simplify things to Coke or Pepsi.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't like Coke or Pepsi. Yeah. What am I going to do? I guess I just have to face up to fear.
Oh, yeah.
Continue the discussion.
Well, it's basically a corporate takeover. That's what it is. You don't have a democracy in the sense that people can actually vote for candidates that they believe in anymore. It's a bit of a sham. It's a bit of a front. Okay, and then everything gets pretty much stacked against those particular citizens that are enlightened enough to see that the choices that they're given are not necessarily in their best interest. But there are some right now, particularly in the Trump camp, that are so adamantly opposed to Hillary Clinton that there's very little that he could say or do that would prevent them from leaving his camp. All right, there are what they call not so much. These are not so much out of fear. These people actually have conviction. These people, they're not all crazy. Some of them can give you some cogent reasons why they are, pro-Trump. They could give a damn about conservatism. That's no longer an issue with them.
Yeah.
They'll give examples of immigrants moving into a country. I think they've used Sweden. You move in. There's so many immigrants moving into Sweden now that there's a concern among the right that Sweden will lose its identity. All right.
Where have I heard that before?
So you'll these aren't
that's Germany 1930s, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, even though a lot of the reports that I've seen discussing legal immigration, I will say that immigrants largely melt into the U.S. fairly quickly. So it's not like, they may still, hold on to a lot of their traditions, which they have every right to do so.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're going to be, raising the Mexican flag at the White House because we have X number of Mexican immigrants or X number of insert any other nationality.
That's your argument, contrary to the one that they're posing. And it's that they're not going to.
I haven't lost my identity.
Well, there you go. That's just
whatever white identity.
And then on the tax issue, they feel that they're paying 50%. How are you paying 50%? Well, they take into consideration the fact that there are so many social programs out there, and that they're paying for these programs that they don't feel they should be paying for them. They'll look at certain social programs and they'll highlight the abuses that take place, and they want to be free of a lot of these things.
I'm gonna pose this question to both of you. 1970s, after the war in Southeast Asia ended, you had a lot of folks that migrated here from Vietnam, from Laos, from Cambodia. A lot of folks migrated here from those countries. Fast forward to the Middle East today, where you have a civil war in Syria and you have so many displaced people in Syria and the countries around it, and you have a lot of folks that are migrating or trying to migrate to the United States to avoid what's happened and what's happening there. What's the difference?
Well, I think first you need to start, and I'm no expert on the Muslim religion, but you need to understand that there's two or three different kinds. There's Sunni, there's Shia, and there's Sufi. And again, you can look up the functional differences between them. I think one is more orthodox, one's more traditional, and I think the Sufi is more the mystical aspect of it.
Kind of like Baptist, Congregationalists, and Catholics, sort of.
And I think the problem is more so, I would say, with the Republican side that.
Well, if you want to make it clearer, more, if you take the Sunnis, they are less in fundamentalism than the Shiites. The Shiites are more fundamentalists. However, the Sunnis will use fundamentalist thinking if they feel that it will somehow or other give them more support, and if they can build up. There's essentially those are the two, the Sunni and the Shia. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, but I think the problem is a lot of people will lump all Muslims together. And they're the kind of people that I think get offended if you lump all Christians together or if you lump all Jewish people together. So they're the ones that'll jump up and be like social warriors and say, oh, you can't judge, Christianity based on the Westboro Baptist Church. You can't judge, Jewish people on. I don't know if you saw. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. There was a bus that was attacked by a bunch of really Orthodox Jewish men because they didn't want men and women sitting next to each other. So they wanted the women to move. I think it was to the back of the bus, and they were throwing rocks at it and everything else. But no, you can't judge all Jewish people based on that, however many number of that was. But somehow you can magically treat all Muslims as the same when you're talking about terrorism, even though there's differing numbers of how much of a percentage it is. There's anywhere from 5 to 10%. Some say it's like 20%. I don't know if it's that high, but even if it was 20%, that still negates 80% of the people that are just out there to take care of their families. And as you pointed out, they're leaving to run away from terrorism. They're not leaving to fund terrorism in this country. So if you're running from terrorism, even if you get some people that are now going to say, okay, no, well, you're going to get, say, 1,000 people that are peaceful people, you're going to get 1 or 2 people that are going to somehow forge all the necessary documents and wait all the necessary time to possibly kind of sort of maybe do something in the future here. So they're using not just the fear of if you don't vote for us, you're letting the other candidate win. They're using the fear of, well, if you let any Muslim in now, you're perchance letting that one guy in who might do something. And if we're using that as an arbiter, why not just close down all immigration?
Because anybody could do it.
And if you're going to do that, why not just shut down all religion, for that matter?
Oh, yeah.
But
it's not the case. We have a pretty large Muslim community in this country, and they've absorbed it very well. Some from Syria and related areas, Bosnia, and they function well. They're successful. They're citizens, and they don't like the idea of being lumped into the category that pervades a good portion of the American mentality right now. This whole idea that all Muslims are terrorists. They're not that way. And the Muslim community is very conscientious about who these deviants could be. And they are a benefit to the society in that they will monitor their community and they will inform the authority if they suspect there's any kind of trouble.
I did a show now, I think it was last year, about a woman who left Iran because she was a Catholic, fearing the fact that she was a Catholic in Iran. So she was fearing political persecution. She comes to America. Her family, they go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Fine family, never a problem. All of a sudden, one day this guy knocks on her door, bursts in, because I don't know why she thought her husband was knocking, but she thought it was her husband. And this guy rips up her immigration papers, burns them, beats the living you-know-what out of her, calls her a terrorist, calls her everything under the sun because she looked Muslim. And she granted, I think she came from a Muslim family, but she converted to Catholicism. So she left, fearing religious persecution, only to be religiously persecuted. Then you have the story of the guy in Michigan who wanted to open a summer camp on a large acre plot that he had, but he was negated from doing that because there were people fearing he was going to use it as a Muslim ISIS training cell. Somehow egg tosses and potato sack races are going to bring down America now. Or you have the guy who wanted to open a Muslim cultural center. I think this was in either Virginia or West Virginia. And I think I may have shown you this video. This really jacked up, it looks like he was on steroids, guy jumps up and starts screaming and yelling at him. All Muslims are terrorists, won't let the guy talk. And then they somehow removed the Muslim guy, who's very peaceful the whole thing, didn't remove the guy yelling and screaming at him. I don't know how that worked out, but...
But it even gets more bizarre. there's these guys that wear turbans and grow beards. Mm-hmm. People see them, and they're attacked.
Sikhs.
They're Sikhs. They're not even Muslims.
Right.
So the ignorance that pervades the society is just staggering, literally staggering.
That happened, actually. Here's how fiction and reality can sometimes cross. That happened as part of a Spike Lee movie, Inside Man, where there's a bank robbery and one of the men coming out, who's released by the people robbing the bank, has the turban on, and the police, without thinking, automatically corral him and make him and take his turban off. And it says having the turban on is a sign of respect for God, not their God or their God or their God. It's a sign of respect for God. The same actor getting on an airplane about a year ago, the actor that played the person in the movie was thrown off the jet because he had the turban on, because he's a Sikh.
Well, even more ridiculous, there was a case that came out, I think it was a few months ago. There was a professor who was doing a math problem.
Inside Man, good movie. Go ahead.
I haven't seen it, but I'll check it out. But there was a guy doing a math problem on a plane. It was, I don't know what kind of math problem. The woman sitting next to him got concerned that he was writing a message to Al-Qaeda, and they had him thrown off the plane.
Yeah.
Well, it was math.
We're going to continue the discussion. We're going to continue the discussion now till we fade out. But before we get there, this Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson, Joe Niola, and Mike Tui.
I don't know if we have one quick second. If you're interested in the Green Party, go to ctgreenparty.org for the Connecticut Green Party. If you're interested in the Libertarian Party of Connecticut, go to lpct.org.
LPCT.
So that would be Libertarian Party Connecticut.org.
Progressive Soup, David Stevenson, Joe Niola, Mike Tui. Progressive Soup on YouTube, Kristin40, Kristin40. Easier, though, on Facebook, Progressive Soup. And I'm David Stevenson, and continue. Let's take it till we fade out.
Well, we must be pretty close to it.
We covered everything.